Welcome to From a Southside Point of View. I'm your host, Chorizy-E, and I'm here with Josh Nelson of Socks Machine, and we're going to talk about the latest episode of The Mandalorian, which, Josh, I loved. I was so psyched that it was like they didn't do 90 side quests. They got right to Mandalore right away. Josh, what were your just general thoughts on the episode?
We feared they're going to go back to Tatooine. We knew they were going to go back to Tatooine. You're there for like what? 4 minutes?
Yeah.
5 minutes?
Pure comedy skit with Pelly and the Rodian. And then you get right to it. I loved it. Like, we were worried when when the IG-11 piece, like, are they just going to go basic and just go to Tatooine and the Jawas are going to somehow find this piece? I like that the Jawas didn't have it. You got to go a different direction. And that's actually a jumping in point for we could talk obviously more about the episode in a minute, but like the first thing that happens in this episode is they don't have the piece. She gives him R5D4. And my first question of the show is who the F is R5D4? He's actually, you may have looked at him and gone like, that looks like the droid from A New Hope. It is. And Star Wars has a way of, the writers group has a way of taking these like kind of very minor characters like this and building up like this whole backstory for them. Now, it's not in the movies, it's not in the shows, but there is like all this connected material for him. And he is a he. That's I don't know why they have genders for these droids, but he is referred to as a he like kind of everywhere on the internet. So he was on a sandcrawler with R2D2, but he was on that sandcrawler for like 4 or 5 years, never got sold, and then R2D2 convinced him that if he were sold, he needs to malfunction so that R2D2 could get off the sandcrawler, get the message to Obi-Wan Kenobi. To me, unnecessary piece of information there, but I love it. I love it. And so then there's like all kinds of other stuff with him. He was like, he joins the rebellion after he gets off the sandcrawler eventually, because he survives that sandcrawler getting all shot up by the stormtroopers. So he gets away, goes to the rebellion. We don't know how Pelly got him, but now he's with Mando and they go to Mandalore. So, Josh, anything else you want to talk about R5D4? I think that might be enough, but I just wanted to like give the background on him because he's an interesting character now.
No, great background. And it was, again, a pleasant surprise. I was not expecting R5D4 to be involved. And it was like, oh, this is a nice little shout out. I'm like, oh, you're serious. you're taking this to Mandalore. Okay. All right. We brought in Taka Waititi to record that audio for IG-11, and we're not going to follow up with that. All right, excellent. Good. Let's keep moving forward.
I kind of wonder if IG-11 will come back at all, like if that was just a fake out. Like, I feel like they've been trying to fake us out a bunch in this series. And so, like, I wonder if he'll come back, or if that was just like, we just need you to be convinced that a special droid needs to take this trip. And that's what they ended up doing. But they, like we said, they get to Mandalore kind of right away.
Yes. And to jump in real quick, we were worried we weren't going to get to Mandalore for a few episodes. And before we break down this episode, I want to talk about a philosophical point of view here, Chorizy.
Yeah.
I feel something bigger is on the horizon. The fact that we are already in Mandalore and we are going to the living waters in Mandalore in episode 2 suggests something that maybe you and I in the Star Wars community, we are not expecting something that could be happening in this season of The Mandalorian. So now I'm in full expect the unexpected because this was unexpected for me.
I'm with you. And I think we're going to get to that in a little bit because it's a lot of stuff that happened in this episode confuses kind of what you thought this show might be this season. And so I'm very interested in it. And one of the first things is like, what the fuck remains of Mandalore? because like, so
Yeah.
I want to give a little bit of background on Mandalore so that people get like why it kind of looks the way it looks, and some of the things that Din says that don't necessarily line up with what you've maybe seen during the shows. Like if you watch Clone Wars and if you watch Rebels, at that point in the history of Mandalore, they lived in domed cities. So like you could see this thing as kind of like the remains of the dome. And when you see the bombing of it, it was all those domes. So outside of that, those domes was basically wasteland. So think like the Dune Sea in on Tatooine, right? Like it's kind of like that. And like there's nothing really out there. We find out the Alamites were out there, which is fun. But before that, way before that, it was a jungle planet, and it was destroyed by the Mandalorian Wars. Now, canon hasn't really gotten into who was in the Mandalorian Wars, other than Mandalorians. So it could be the Jedi. It could be the Republic. It's not clear right now who it was, like the Old Republic or something. So that aside, they had domed cities. This is what's remaining. This is why you're kind of going underneath these ruins, because it was layered up, So just to give that visual representation to it, I thought that they did a great job of making this look like absolutely devastated. But what did you think about the difference in like Bo-Katan's reaction to seeing it and Din's reaction to seeing it?
Well, I think with Bo-Katan, one, she kind of, the actress, Katie Sackhoff, right?
Yeah.
She has this grin, like this natural grin, like a Cheshire cat. Like, what are you grinning at? And I was thinking like she is having so much fun acting next to Grogu, the puppet, that she's got this grin on her face. I'm like, hey, I'm acting with Baby Yoda, which I wouldn't blame her if that's truly how she felt. But obviously with Bo-Katan, it's a gut punch. It's sadness. I don't know what you would liken it to. I've never ruled a country or a land or anything like that. But imagine a ruler returning to really the scene of the crime, the scene of my failure, my greatest life failure, and just seeing the devastation. So that's one part. With Din, it's the natural curiosity. I've never been on this planet, and wow, look how expansive it is.
Right.
I'm curious in what's on the ground.
He had a very romantic view of it. Like, oh, this used to be this paradise, like he's explaining to Grogu, yeah, I know it looks scary now, but like this was just this lush paradise and you can't believe it. And you'll never really be able to comprehend how great it was. It's interesting to see like his hopefulness for what could be, and I agree with you with Bo-Katan. It is returning to like her biggest failure. Like that's probably why she never wanted to go back. It wasn't that she thought the planet was like irredeemable. It was that I have to go back and relive what I did, right? Like it's just like she does not want to be on this planet, and it's kind of cool that she like the situation forced her hand and made her go there but that confuses things, and we'll talk about that later. That confuses things for me because I did not think she was going to be helpful in this series. And like when she comes out to the plane the spaceship to see and finds Grogu, she was initially going out there to kick Din's ass. Yep. That's what it seemed like. But let's talk a little bit too about like what else is like there on Mandalore. Like obviously, like if you as you watch the episode, there is like this glass like kind of surface to it. It's called Trinitite. I don't know why they had to name it. They could have just called it glass. But to my earlier point, like most of the place was already sand. So when they bombed it, yeah, it like turned to this mineral, right? Like that's it. It actually makes it's for a show that doesn't keep things making a lot of sense. This definitely makes sense that it would do something like that. But people, I don't want to say people, things are still alive there.
Right.
So the Alamites are alive. Those are the things that attacked Din, and they attack. Well, they were planning to attack Bo-Katan. She attacks them, and then whatever those dragon-like things were that were like living down in the depths there. Do you think that there's more alive on this planet, Josh? Is there like are we going to get into like what is actually still existing on this planet, and you know, dealing with all these different possible creatures?
Well, evidently, yeah. When Din goes into the living waters, didn't know if you want to just jump right into what else could be living.
That is
beneath the surface.
That is an exceptional piece of this episode. We'll get to that. We'll go to that. Well, I think we'll probably go to that much later. But yeah, the Mythosaur sighting just blew my mind.
This is what I would compare what we are seeing of Mandalore to a real life example, and that is Chernobyl. And after the Chernobyl disaster, where many, rightfully so, never thought life could ever possibly live there again. To borrow a phrase from Jeff Goldblum in the classic Jurassic Park, life finds a way. And life is finding a way to deal with all of the radiation there. And I think I forgot what publication, but there was an excellent article about the dogs of Chernobyl and how they are evolving and adapting to that environment. And it's a different form of life that we cannot comprehend, but things will live in these types of desolate areas of the planet, like Chernobyl. We didn't think it's still not safe for human beings,
right,
to go to Chernobyl. Mandalore, we thought was not safe for human beings, but thanks to R5D4, it's 93% breathable, so it passes the grade for people to go there. So yes, I think we're going to see different types of creatures on Mandalore that we've never seen before, because they could only exist in these specific type of disaster zones, I guess we could describe it, where they don't live in normal areas, but they can only live and thrive in situations like Mandalore has become.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there has to be, I mean, like, for the Mythosaur to be alive, there has to be something for it to eat, right? For the Alamites to be alive, there has to be something for them to eat. I wonder how many Mandalorians are actually there.
Is that what you're saying? They're getting eaten by Mandalore. Mandalores are getting eaten by these guys.
Well, so somebody's getting at least their blood sucked out by these guys, because what the fuck is this thing? Like,
I know.
This is like Grievous 2.0, man. I don't know what this is. It's straight out of a horror movie, and I kind of love it. But I saw this thing, and I was like, at first, I thought it was just a droid, right? But it is obviously some kind of living being. It's got that eye in there. It's got the tubes. It needs Din's blood for some reason. So I don't know if this is a Mandalorian who, in your words, life just found a way, or if it's someone else. Like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. But this thing is definitely evil, and it's eating, like it's getting blood from somebody, right? So it might be Alamites that it's doing that from, but there were a lot of helmets down there in that little area, and so it makes me think there's still some Mandalorians kicking around on the planet.
Or returning.
Just kind of no way out. Yeah, that's a good point too. It could be just that they were like, hey, there's nowhere else for us. I'm coming back here. And they can't communicate out because of the atmosphere. So like, it's very interesting that there could be Mandalorians there. There's definitely Alamites. There's definitely Mythosaurs, or at least one. There's definitely those little flying things. And there's definitely whatever this is, but this is terrifying.
Is it drawing blood to survive? Or
it looked like it, because like it has those tubes with the same stuff running through it. It looked like.
Yeah. I had two conspiracy theories. My first one is that it's drawing blood to feed to the Empire scientists. Like this droid, living droid thing has always worked for the Empire. And their programming is to capture any wayward Mandalorians. And if you're drawing the blood and the DNA of the Mandalorians, again, it was a Mandalorian that created the clone army. Could they be doing that again? That was one conspiracy theory. My second conspiracy theory, far-fetched. This droid is working for the Armorer.
Oh wow. So if and I like either way, either the Empire or the Armorer. And I like the idea that it's grabbing living things, testing the blood, and finding out the toxicity levels in that blood to see, like, can we go back? Or can we, like, from the Empire's point of view, it would be like, can we, is there more to mine from this planet? Like, can we go back and mine all the Beskar that's still there? Like the Beskar ore that's in the mines. Like, I think that's a possibility, Josh. I think like this could be something in the service of someone outside the planet.
So my conspiracy with the Armorer, and why I think this droid is working for the Armorer, is that I think the Armorer knew about the living waters in Mandalore. And Beskar is almost impossible to find these days. What better way of finding Beskar than taking it off dead Mandalorians?
Oh, wow.
So you can raise your new cult. I don't think the Armorer has any interest in returning to Mandalore. So that is my conspiracy theory with this device. This droid finds Mandalorian, saves the metal. Armorer takes said metal, as we saw at the very beginning of this season, crafts new armor to continue building her cult of a Mandalore colony that will never return to Mandalore. That's my conspiracy theory. It is probably way off.
I love it because it leads to my next question. After the Bo-Katan stuff this episode, who the fuck is the villain in this series? We got no villain right now. So I figured it was going to be Bo-Katan. I figured she was going to start a Mandalorian civil war. That was my prediction. That prediction was seemingly wrong right now. But hey, who cares? I was right about the Mythosaur. Okay, so we're chalk one up for Chorizy for once.
You're good. You're 500 right now. Batting 500.
But so Bo-Katan comes and saves Din. And I think that one interesting thing that happens or a couple interesting things that happen in that whole sequence is, one, when she's talking to Grogu and she's talking about how the Jedi used to fight side by side with the Mandalorians. This is a more recent occurrence, right? The Armorer is still pissed off about the wizards from, long ago that fought against them. So I kind of have this feeling that Bo-Katan and Din are going to start to rally people back to Mandalore, going like, we could live there if we wanted to. They're going to go back to the Armorer because the Armorer is who Din is trying to redeem himself from, right? Like, so he's going to be like, I went to the living waters. Bo's going to say she saw the Mythosaur, like all this stuff. Like, I'm thinking that the Armorer is still not going to want any part of it, to your point. I don't think she has any desire to go back there. But I think, and this is another along the bigger theories, I think that we're going to see that Bo-Katan and the Armorer know each other.
Yes, they do. I'm 100% with you.
I think she's Rook cast.
Yes.
Like, it's very possible she's just another one of Maul's minions, like that was like following Maul. And that would become like kind of an insurmountable piece here. And I think that could lead the Armorer to be a bit of a villain, though I don't think she's the main villain of this season. But I'll let you go, Josh. Who do you think is the villain?
I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know, but I think my prediction is in the very near future to prove that he went to living waters. He needs someone to testify on his behalf. That's going to be Bo-Katan. And we're going to have a Bo-Katan armor sit down. And I'm with you. They know each other.
Yeah.
Bo-Katan's going to take off her helmet and like force the armor to take off her helmet. And then we're going to realize and who the armor truly is. And for those that do not know, the armor is probably from Death Watch, which Bo-Katan at one point was part of Death Watch. And then Bo-Katan left Death Watch. So these two could have been rivals for many years.
And so one thing about that too is there was a group of Death Watch that ended up following Darth Maul when he got the Darksaber. And one thing that changed about their appearance was that they added horns to their helmets because Darth Maul has those horns. The Armorer has those. So like I've since the series has started, I've wondered if that's, if she's part of that group. And it'll be very interesting if she is, because that is the war that happened kind of right at the end of what would be the Clone Wars. And then Bo-Katan doesn't take control of Mandalore until right before the Empire falls apart. So she's in control of it for a very short time, if timeline wise. But they have to hate each other. Like they drove those Mandalorians off the planet. That's why they lived on a moon. So like, I don't see how they're just like, hey, yeah, let's get everybody back together, because they hate each other.
Yeah. And Din's going to have to make a decision, right? And it's going to be parallel to the decision that Grogu made in the Book of Boba Fett. Does he decide to become a Jedi, or does he want to become or follow the path of the Mandalorian? And we know what Grogu picked. Obviously, he picked the path of becoming a Mandalorian, and that's why he's being taught the Mandalorian ways by Din. Din's going to have to pick a side. There is no middle ground here.
And Bo-Katan talks a lot in this episode about how the Mandalorians fought against each other, and all the infighting led to the destruction. And when she was looking on the destruction that it had caused, she must have replayed that a million times in her mind over the years of like, what do we do wrong? And she came to the conclusion, and describes it in this show, that it was all the infighting. And so what's going to be interesting is her decision. Is she going to be willing to fight more, or is she going to be willing to follow Din Djarin, the new leader of Mandalore? That's I think it's a decision she's going to have to make.
And the middle ground might be Din pulling out the Darksaber and being like, supposedly you are all supposed to follow me. And the Armor and her clan, Children of the Watch, probably don't buy into that. And then Din, rightfully so, is going to question everything about the Children of the Watch, the creed, everything. I did what you told me to do. I have proof of someone who saved me and who went to living waters with me. And that's not good enough. Having the Darksaber is not good enough. What is your agenda? Yeah. And I think that we're going to get that type of conflict in this season.
I like that, because like it's like him peeling away from the creed. And I think Bo-Katan's like buying into the creed a little bit more. Like there's a few moments in this episode where she is taken aback by things that are said or things that she sees. And while the Mythosaur is the big one, obviously that's, she's still sarcastic right before that. So we'll see how she is after that. But she was taken aback when she talked about her father and dying for the planet, dying for Mandalore.
Right.
And Din just stopping and saying, this is the way. Like, she was visibly shaken by that. And I think that, her seeing how devout he is to the people of Mandalore, and the fact that she has kind of thrown it all aside, like this is all bullshit. It's going to be interesting to see how she reacts after all that happened in this.
So kind of like a path of a born again Christian, someone that hasn't gone to church for a really long time. Something devastating happens to them. they go back to the church and they like rediscover their religion. Kind of like that theory that you're going with here.
In a way, okay. I think that it's not so much a religious awakening as it is like remembering why that religion was in place, right? Like the creed is there not because they need to follow every single thing and not take your helmet off and all the bullshit that goes with it. It's there because this is about your people and like taking care of your people. And I think that because she bunched those together, she forgot about that part. Just like the armorer only is paying attention to the cultish part of it and not actually about protecting their people, right? Or fighting for their people. So I think that there's Din is, you know, he's in the wheelhouse of where you're supposed to be with this creed. And I think it's going to start to show that there's factions on both sides. But go ahead.
I was going to say Mandalorians are like what? Top 5 most fascinating race in Star Wars, if not the most fascinating race. They're definitely one of the more complex.
They have to be because there's just so much strange history to them, and they're not part of the Republic. They've always kind of stayed outside of that. So they're not really swayed by the timelines that we have for the other stuff. Like, oh, they're not part of the Empire. They're not part of the Republic. So they're just this outside thing. It's kind of like why the Chiss Ascendancy is so interesting too, right? Because they don't follow any of this timeline. They don't deal with these rules. They have their own thing, and they're warlike people. So there's like all this fighting and stuff. And because, you know, we watch Star Wars for the wars. So,
it's in the title.
And they got a lot of them. So I do find that fascinating. I will say, Josh, I think if I'm looking for a villain for this season, I think as much as the Mandalorians are going to get split apart here, I think we're going to end up with Moff Gideon coming back. And he's going to get out. He's going to escape the tribunal. He's going to get back in control of some of his fleet. And I think Navarro is going to be the first place he goes. I think he's going to be very pissed off about what happened on Navarro and going to want to go tear that up. And if there's one person that can unite the Mandalorians together, despite all these differences we just talked about, it's the guy that torched their planet. They could come back together to go kick his ass and kill him. They alluded to it in, I think it's in the Book of Boba Fett, when they're like, why didn't you kill that guy? You know, he deserved it. I think they're going to get their chance. And I think that could be the thing that kind of brings the factions back together. There's nothing like killing an enemy to bring everybody back together.
He tried to kill himself.
Yeah, he did.
He tried to kill himself at the end of season 2.
He's going to be pissed. Like, if he gets out, like, he's going to want to take out a lot of anger. He's, you know, you look at him, he's an angry guy. So
is there somebody in this picture that we are not seeing who could be the villain?
Definitely. There's tons. I just picked up, the only reason I put these 3 in here because they've all held the Darksaber.
Yes. Okay.
And I think that's going to be a bit of a theme. But yeah, who Josh, who do you think, because I will always say the same person and I don't want to just do it, but who do you think could be the big bad here?
Man, if we're already in Mandalore, we've already been to the Living Waters in episode 2. I think they have been hiding at Disney. I think Favreau Favreau and Filoni have been hiding their true intentions. I believe we are getting Ahsoka earlier than expected. Someone is breaking Moff Gideon out. And I'm going to go. I'm wondering if we're going to see Thrawn. If we're already in Mandalore now and we have, I don't know how many episodes left in this season, something bigger is happening. We thought the biggest thing happening in this season was Din returning to Mandalore. We've done that in season 2. Something bigger is coming. And I think Moff Gideon breaking out is a big thing, but I wonder if there's something bigger than that.
I love the idea of Thrawn. Anything, and someone in the comments just wrote what I was gonna say, which is Sabine Wren. Sabine Wren is gonna show up in this show, and I think it is gonna be Thrawn related. I think that we're going to intersect with the trying to find Ezra, and it is going to come into play here. I think this is where we're going to get our first glimpse of whoever the bad guy of season 1 of the Ahsoka series is going to be. I don't think we're going to get to Thrawn yet. I think they're going to continue to tease Thrawn and tease Thrawn and tease Thrawn. And I think we're going to see, this is where, and Josh, we talked about this a little off the air about the rumors and theories about what is going to be the Thrawn Ahsoka kind of thing, where Ezra Bridger and Thrawn ended up. And supposedly, and this is this is obviously just getting in a rabbit hole on Reddit and finding stuff. This is Filoni's attempt to bring back an Asajj Ventress type character. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a female Darkseid user that is the villain against Ahsoka in season 1, and I think we might get a glimpse of that character, and then quickly followed by Sabine and Ahsoka trying to fight that character. So I think that could be extremely interesting, and I agree with you. Like that, I think that comes at the very end of the season. I think there's a lot of infighting first. I think the Navarro thing, if that happens, we'll see all that. But I think ultimately, Moff Gideon is killed, but you find out that he's not the one you really need to worry about. Right. There's someone way worse that you need to worry about.
So I guess I'm still going to be indecisive here, Chorizy. I still don't know who the villain is. I don't think that's a terrible thing to be in season 3 of The Mandalorian or chapter 18. It's just, they have thrown us a huge curveball before. In the Book of Boba Fett, in that episode, we go back to Din in the meat locker, right?
Yeah.
We were not expecting those 2 episodes of Book of Boba Fett, and we got them. Could we get 2 episodes of like a preview of the Ahsoka series in this season?
Why not?
And are we getting that on Friday? I should say on Wednesday.
They absolutely rushed to Mandalore. They rushed to the Mythosaur. I love it. I love that they did all that.
It's got to be something big, right?
It does feel like you're right. Like they're going to kind of switch into a whole new lane. I mean, like they've faked us out so many times,
right?
Already in two episodes, right? Like even the introduction of the Mythosaur was a fake out because you think, oh, he's going to the waters and that's great, and then like he just disappears, and like there was part of my mind that was still like, you know, we're gonna find out Din's like me, he just can't swim, and that was the problem. But no, it was the Mythosaur. And for those of you who may have watched the episode and aren't an extreme nerd like I am, you might have been saying, what the fuck is a Mythosaur? Which is a totally normal thing to ask because they give you no explanation of this throughout any of it, right? And the Mythosaur has not even really been talked about in the show except for when Queel mentions it at the very in season 1 when they're trying to ride the blurg, saying, you guys tamed and rode these back in the day. Now you can ride this young bull here, you know. And the Mythosaur is the signet that they have. So on my glass here and in his hand there, that's the Mandalorian signet. And Bo-Katan gives the very abridged version of what the Mythosaur is, but they lived. So there's more information in Legends, but in canon, it's still the same. For the broad strokes, they lived on Mandalore. They are massive beings. Apparently, what we're finding here is that they're kind of like Godzilla-esque. where they can live on land and they live underneath the planet, like in the water underneath the planet, and they can obviously emerge because they existed all over the place. In Legends, the first Mandalorian leaders, it was Mandalore the First, I think, drove them to extinction. So that's a different take than what we're seeing in canon, which is Mandalore the Great tamed and rode the Mythosaur. But Josh, I think what's interesting here is that it's possible that they were actually just kind of, I think, and this is another thing taking away from Godzilla, the planet hibernating, whatever, not active. That's why no one has seen it. But similar to Godzilla, where nuclear bombs went off on Earth, it awoke it, and now it's here. It's incredibly gigantic. I mean, like the picture that we have up, it gives you a sizing here, because that is, I think that's Bo-Katan bringing up Din. So that's 2 human beings about the size of the eyeball of this thing. And it's awake, so I assume it's eating. Alamites be damned. They're gonna be a feast for a while for this guy, because he looks pretty big, and so I'm sure he could eat. But Josh, what do you think about the introduction of the Mythosaur here? Din is passed out, so I don't think Din sees it, but Bo-Katan definitely sees the Mythosaur that she was so sarcastic about just moments before.
I don't know how much more we're going to see it. I don't know if the Mythosaur will just stay below the waters, and they're going to have to try to convince this Mythosaur to come back, or maybe there's another battle in Mandalore and the Mythosaur rises from the ground or something to be an ally for the Mandalorians to protect the planet, right? Because there are creatures in Star Wars that's the only thing they care about, is protecting their planet. I think we saw this in Rebels. I forgot what the creature's name was. The Vindu. Yes, thank you. Or even the wolves as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Bendu? Bendu, I think it is.
Bendu. Yes, yeah. Bendu. Thank you. I don't know how much we're going to see of the Mythosaur, because just from a TV production standpoint, if this thing's going to be huge, that's a lot of CGI work. That gets really expensive. You can't constantly show something like that. So I don't know how much more we're going to see of the Mythosaur for the rest of the season, but it exists. We don't know the full scale, but it exists. And if we do see the full scale, I think it's just going to add more to the myth of how in the world did any Mandalorian tame one of these things and ride it? But it'd be kind of like Game of Thrones with the Targaryens and the dragons. Huge dragons. How does this one person tame that dragon? And maybe this is along the path of the Mandalorians rediscovering themselves, rediscovering and how they were able to connect with nature as well and be able to tame these types of beasts.
I agree. I think that I agree that we're not going to see it for a while. I think it was a great introduction. I think it's meant to just kind of instill in Bo-Katan that, like, you can feel however you want to feel about the Creed, but it's not all bullshit, right? Like, and like kind of rejuvenate her feelings for the Mandalorian people, right? I think that was its effect that it was supposed to have here. I do agree that it's going to come back later, in some regard. I think it's Grogu that tames the Mythosaur.
What an image that would be. This Mythosaur coming along the screen, everyone's freaking out, and Grogu just pops its head and does his little wave.
I mean, like, it did it to the Rancor, right?
That's
I mean,
true.
now the Mythosaur is about 10 times the size of the Rancor, but like it definitely was a like introduction to that. Like, I think that they may try to fight it at first, but once they realize that it can be an ally, I think it'll be Grogu and Din to some extent. I think someone's gonna have to rocket him up to to be at at eye level with it. But yeah, I think it's gonna be Grogu. I think that they're building towards that. They've put a lot of the foundation in for that. But I don't think that that's this season. I think that they're gonna wait on that. I think they're gonna build up a lot more before we get to that. So, Josh, what do you think? We talked a little bit about it, but what do you think's next in this series? Do you think it's gonna break away and go into like the Ahsoka series?
I don't know if that's going to be the next episode. I have to prepare myself for it to be the next episode, but I really do like your idea, Chorizy, that I think someone mentioned the comment section. The rumor is that this is a pretty lengthy episode. This is about a 55-minute episode that we're going to be getting on Wednesday. That's a lot of story to tell. Maybe it is Moff Gideon. We spent 2 episodes on Mandalore. Maybe we take a side quest here, or we start the B plot of the show and we get to understanding who the real villain is, and maybe we learn more about the New Republic and how they are handling Moff Gideon and old Empire problems.
I love it. The Moff Gideon breakout has to come at some point. I think Katie O'Brien, as we mentioned last week, is going to be key to that. I think that's going to be an awesome episode. And then they're going to have a I decided now, Josh, it's just going to be a subtitle that's going to be like when the stormtroopers just inaudibly say, we can't get around the fire in the Obi-Wan series. I think there's going to be like a mumble. And then if you read the subtitles, it's going to say, Cara Dune was killed.
Oh no, that ship blew up. Cara Dune was on that ship.
It's like it says Cara Dune was on that ship. Yeah, exactly. Well, all right, man. I'm with you. I think we're gonna shift. We got a lot in 2 episodes. I think we're gonna shift now and into a different story. But I think if it is Moff Gideon getting out, it's gonna make things very wild. I also think if we get a little taste of Din going back to the Armorer, and the Armorer still not wanting to consider him part of the tribe, that's going to be the start of more things falling apart. So I think we got some very cool stuff here. We got a great rescue scene, 2 rescue scenes really, and now it's time for everything to go wrong. So I'm looking forward to it as a chaos junkie. So I will see you next week for this, and I can't wait. But thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.